What do you like? Tell me what you like.
There's value in that because it almost gives the brain like a vacation, right?
Holistic health is completely underappreciated, but so critical. Eating whole foods, and the key is just to find something that you really enjoy.
Welcome to the NAMP Nourishing You podcast. I'm Kristen Burkett.
And I'm Diana Wally. We're your hosts for NAMP's podcast dedicated to connecting holistic health enthusiasts with each other to share practical information from the holistic wellness space for enhanced vitality.
Diana and I are master nutrition therapists, board certified in holistic nutrition with private practices and an online joint venture that supports clients and practitioners as they strive to reach their full potential. We're honored to be hosting this podcast for NAMP and connecting our listeners with the latest in holistic wellness.
And if you enjoyed today's show, help us out by commenting below, liking this video, and subscribing to the channel to help us spread the word.
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the Nourishing You podcast. Today we're thrilled to talk with Todd White, the founder of Dry Farm Wines, about how wine can have a better health profile. And with the holidays upon us, this is an important topic for those of us who like to enjoy an occasional glass of vino. As the founder of Dry Farm Wines, a writer, speaker, and leader in the organic natural wine movement, Todd White has widely educated communities on conscious consumption. Todd is a self-described biohacker who practices daily meditation, Wim Hof breathing, cold thermogenesis, a ketogenic diet, and daily 22-hour intermittent fasting. He's also a frequent speaker on topics including meditation and the Dry Farm Wine's unique company culture. Built on a foundation of honesty and peace, Dry Farm Wines has seen remarkable growth, making it one of the fastest growing private companies in the US without any debt or investors. Dry Farm Wines is endorsed by many leading U.S. performance influencers with pure natural wines that are lab tested to ensure each bottle is sugar-free, lower in sulfites, and lower in alcohol. The wines are friendly to low-carb, paleo, keto, and low-sugar diets. Dry Farm Wines is proud to be the largest natural wine merchant in the world, bringing awareness to natural wine consumption and supporting farmers who honor the soil. Welcome, Todd. It is such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. There's a lot to share.
Yeah. So first of all, congrats on the success of your company. Your wines are delicious. And I love that Dry Farm Wines is built on a foundation of honesty and peace, which is toastworthy. And of course, peace is top of mind during the holidays. So I heard through the grapevine, pun intended, everyone. I saw that on your website, which was so cute. So
Nice.
I heard it through the grapevine that you started Dry Farm Wines as part of a personal mission to improve your health. So can you tell us more about your wellness journey and how it motivated you to become a natural wine expert?
Well, I've been drinking wine since I was 9 years old, not on the regular at 9, but tasting wines. And I was a wine aficionado my entire life. In fact, I moved to the world famous Napa Valley about 20 years ago. I don't live there anymore, but I just had a lifetime love affair with drinking wine. I haven't drank spirits for a very long time, and maybe 25 years since I've drank spirits, but I do have an ongoing love affair with wine. And so maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I had started to get, I would say my 40s, I started to get prepared for my 60s. I'm now 62. And I was really preparing for a wellness and longevity lifestyle. And that served me pretty well. When I got into my 50s, my early 50s, I decided to really kind of double down on, I started to get more serious. As a part of that, I experimented for a couple of years with a therapeutic ketogenic diet. And now I follow what I would call modified keto. But therapeutic ketogenic is pretty intense. And about the same time, I found that my relationship with wine was changing, and that I was feeling terrible from drinking. In fact, I stopped drinking for a while in a period I refer to as suffering through sobriety, because I really liked drinking wine. I really liked the community and the social aspects and the love that's shared through pure natural wine. But I stopped drinking for a while, and I thought it was alcohol. Sometimes people report the side effect of a ketogenic diet is that their relationship with alcohol changes. And I want to talk about alcohol in a moment, but just give you quickly how I got here. So I wasn't really looking, Dry Farm Wines was not intended to be a business. I was just trying to find a healthier way for me to consume wine. And so I accidentally stumbled upon the natural wine movement, which was really just getting underway at that time. Nobody knew what natural wine was then. This is 7 years ago. And so I'd never heard of natural wine, although I lived right in the center of the most important wine appellation in North America. I'd never heard of it either. So I didn't know what it meant, because it's a very confusing term. When I tell people I drink natural wine, they say, aren't all wines natural? And the answer is no. And we're going to talk about why in just a moment. But so anyway, it was sort of all just an accident, and then it became an accidental business. So it was really in the pursuit of my trying to find a healthier way to continue to consume wine. And what I'm going to share with you about what's wrong with wine today was exactly what was making me feel bad. And I'm sure you guys have had a similar experience with conventional wines.
Absolutely. And I love your story. I mean, I think most of us get into a healthier way by virtue of having something we're trying to get over in one way or another, trying to find our next best self, whatever that's going to be. As nutrition professionals, we talk a lot about food quality. It's always number one with our clients. And we're looking for people to, prioritize organic or look for pasture-raised animal meats, those kinds of things. But we don't talk about beverages very often, other than maybe trying to get rid of soda, that kind of thing. So, but we know that people love to socialize with wine and other alcoholic beverages, but with wine specifically, especially since we're talking to you, we know there's differences in the way wines are made, as you have alluded to. And so we'd love to get your expertise in this area to understand more about what the possible additives are, different chemicals, things that might affect us negatively. We want to understand the healthier aspects of what wine can be like as well. But let's spend a few minutes diving into some of these things that most people don't even know are in conventional wines.
People,
and what makes the difference.
They have no idea. So let's talk about three things initially. One, alcohol. Number two, because I want to say something about alcohol in general. Number two, how did we get here? And how did wine become so toxic? And what are the dirty, dark secrets of the wine business? And those dirty, dark secrets are largely around a lack of transparency and a whole bunch of chemicals and additives to wine that people have no idea about. I'm going to tell you exactly what they are. I'm going to tell you exactly what people like the NIH say about these additives. That's the National Health Institute. And so the same thing that's happened in the food industry has happened in the wine industry. So let's get to how we got here in a moment on that. But let me say this about alcohol. As a health enthusiast and a wellness advisor, I would tell you that, and this surprises most people more than anything I'll say, because they think I'm here to promote wine or sell wine, and that's not at all why I'm here. Why I'm here is to help people become educated that if you do decide that you're going to drink, how you should think about drinking and what you should drink based on our research and what we call conscious consumption. But to say this about alcohol first, alcohol is a very dangerous neurotoxin. Some people shouldn't drink at all, and it ruins millions of lives every year. And if you don't drink today, I'm not suggesting that you start drinking. And it's possible in my wellness journey, it's very possible that my life from a wellness perspective could be enhanced if I stopped drinking. But that's not going to happen. So here's who I want to speak to. If you enjoy wine and you're going to drink, and you're a regular wine drinker like me, and you've decided that that's the right thing for you, then I want to help you get educated about how to make better choices that are going to enhance your health. And so I'm not here to promote alcohol or promote wine. I'm here to educate people who want to drink and want to celebrate and enjoy the social aspects and the celebration of love and the things that come from conscious consumption of pure natural wine. And as it relates, let me touch one other thing on alcohol. There's a lot of people in the health community, particularly in the biohacking community, who recommend that people drink spirits, and particularly tequila, because it's thought to be a distilled pure product. And I don't disagree with that. It's just that my problem with tequila is it's 45% alcohol. And one of the things I'm trying to do as a part of my wellness and longevity journey is to contain and minimize my exposure to alcohol while still enjoying its benefits. And so I don't want to drink something that's 45% alcohol. I want to drink something that's lower in alcohol. That's the reason we only drink and sell lower alcohol wines than what you'll find in conventional wines. That also affects the taste of the wine from our perspective in a profoundly positive way. It makes it more food friendly and just more enjoyable to drink. And consequently, because it's lower in alcohol, you can also drink more without having the same negative remnants of drinking higher alcohol. So that I just wanted to kind of put that out there about alcohol because it is controversial, but if you enjoy it as I do, and most of my friends and hundreds of thousands of my customers, they want to make more conscious decisions around it. So let's talk about how in the wine industry, how did wine become this product, what we call an engineered beverage that they call wine? It's made by chemists, not by farmers. So how did we get here? Well, the same thing that happened in the food industry has happened in the wine business. So using public money from Wall Street, private equity money and private money from and public money from Wall Street, the industry got what's called in the private equity world, which is a form of investment, what's called consolidated or rolled up. So the wine industry got rolled up. And so how that happens is that a handful of companies go around and buy up most everyone else. So the story here of how wine became what it is today is about money and greed. So today, the top 3 wine companies in the United States produce almost 60% of all U.S. wines. That's just the top 3. Wow. The top 25 wine companies in the United States produce 90% of all wine. So when you go into the store and you see these rows and rows of bottles or in a bottle shop, most of that wine is made by just a handful of companies. And they put animals or farmhouses or historic chateaus on the label or pretty vineyards to have you believe that these wines are produced on small family farms or in historic chateaus. The fact of the matter is that most of these wines are produced in ginormous, monstrous wine factories located in Central California. Now, it's also fair to note that most of this wine is farmed with chemicals. Only 5% of U.S. vineyards are organic. So 95% of all the wine you see is also industrially farmed with glyphosate and other dangerous herbicides and chemicals. So you've got toxic farming on almost everything. Then you've got the additives used in winemaking. Same reason we do toxic farming is because it's cheaper and faster. And then in order to make wine cheaper and faster, not better or healthier, there's the use of additives. Now, there's 76 additives approved by the government for the use in winemaking. Now, why don't you know about these 76 additives unless you've heard me talk about them? Because the wine industry has a very powerful lobby in Washington, D.C. And see, in Washington on K Street, where they make lobby sausage, lobbying in the way business is done in Washington is that money is exchanged for legislation. Power and money are exchanged for special interest. So these 76 additives, you don't know about them because the wine industry has been very successful for many years in squashing and crushing any movement to get transparency on a wine bottle. So wine is the only major food product without contents information, no ingredients label, and no nutritional information. Well, that's important to people like me because I live a largely sugar-free lifestyle, and I don't drink sugar, and I certainly don't want it in my wine. So it's important for me to know some basic nutritional information about what I'm consuming. But the additives are even a more disturbing story, and why the industry has worked so vigorously to keep contents labeling off of wine bottles. So let's talk about these 76 additives for a moment. Let me stop here and say everything I have shared with you, industry size, producers, additives, what I'm about to tell you, everything I'm about to tell you is easily verifiable on a web search. So you can go to Google and find out all of this on your own. They don't make it easy to find, but you can do that. Or you can go to our website and get public links to everything that I'm telling you. Links to all the government documents, links to the NIH, the National Institute of Health, classifications on all these toxins. It's all there. They just managed to keep it secret. It's kind of an open secret, if you will. So if you knew what to look for, you go to our website, we'll show you what to look for. And we'll send it to you for your show notes as well, if you like. Yeah. But of the 76 additives, 2 of them are acute toxins. Now, acute toxin has a clinical definition. An acute toxin is any substance that with one dose or multiple doses over a 24-hour period will cause severe health reactions and or death. So 2 of these additives are an acute toxin. 12 of these additives are classified as health hazards by the NIH. 3 of these additives are made from 6 animal organs, including pig pancreas and cow stomachs, cow liver, fish bladders. So 4 of these additives are derivatives of black mold that is known to be mycotoxin, including ochratoxin A. Now, again, all of this is not something I made up. This is just all straight, cold, hard facts. Now, their position is, there's not enough of these toxins and these health hazardous compounds in these wines to make you sick or to cause you harm. Our position is they're not necessary in making high quality wine, and I don't want to drink them in any amount. The most dangerous toxin in this group is called dimethyl dicarbonate. It's used to treat and sterilize wine when it contains bacterial faults. So the most common bacterial fault is called Brettanomyces. When Brettanomyces gets in the wine, and it's quite common, it leaves an off-putting aromatic and an off-putting taste to the wine. So they use this sterilizing chemical, which is highly toxic, to correct this bacterial fault and bring the wine back to its original state without the fault. So the thing about dimethyl dicarbonate, which is it's a chemical made in California and sold to the wine industry and other industries, by the way. It's not exclusive to wine. It was also used to treat other beverages as a sterilizer. But it's highly toxic. If you were to drink the wine within 24 hours of application, you'd probably die. And now the company that makes it has convinced the government that it's safe, and that the government is not responsible for proving its safety. The government simply accepts what the manufacturer tells them, right? And so the manufacturer claims that this toxin hydrolyzes into methanol and carbon dioxide. Now, let's just say even if that's true, the problem with methanol is that it's far more toxic than ethanol. And I don't want to be drinking methanol either. And so even if, in fact, their claim were true, it's still just adding more toxins into hydrolyzed methanol. So if you're like me, and I expect most of your audience and you guys, I care about what I put in my body. And it's not necessary to consume these additives. And for many people, including me, they make me feel bad. And so we sell what's known as natural wine, and we recommend that people drink a natural wine. So let me just define for you quickly before we take a question or two what a natural wine means. Because again, it's a very confusing term to consumers, because when I say natural wine, the instant response for those who don't know what it is aren't all wines natural. And they're not for the reasons that I just explained to you. But what a natural wine does, natural wine has just 3 components. One, natural wines are always organically or biodynamically grown. Biodynamic farming is a prescriptive advanced form of organic farming. So at the bare minimum, they're organic or they may be biodynamic. Number 2, and this is the only one that's a little bit confusing, is that natural wines are always fermented with wild indigenous native yeast. Now, what does that mean? Conventional wines are not fermented with this type of yeast. On the skin of every grape berry at the time of harvest, there's a white waxy film on the outside of every berry, no matter where or how it's grown. It has a white waxy film on it. That is yeast that has collected naturally on the grape through the air in the vineyard where the grape is grown. That yeast is the only yeast allowed for fermentation in natural wine. So when you make natural wine, you don't need anything at all except for the ripe fruit and a press to press the juice from and a tank to put it in to ferment. That's all that goes in it. Now, in a conventional wine, they don't use these wild native yeast because they're too fragile. They're very temperamental. You can't make wine in very large volume using native yeast. So instead, they kill the native yeast and they inoculate it with a GMO lab cultured yeast. This yeast has been modified to be very sturdy and strong, easy to work with, and sort of indestructible yeast. It will also withstand a higher alcohol environment, and you can buy these GMO yeast in various flavor profiles. So in other words, you have this terribly farmed industrial grape, it has no character. You want it to taste like that it's from the Mediterranean. They have a yeast for that. So yeast imparts flavors into things that it is inoculated to. As an example, and you'll know this to be true from the sourdough bread baking craze of the pandemic, where people would be trying to get the mother yeast from somebody that they trusted because their mother yeast imparted this terrific depth of flavor. So yeast imparts flavor to things that it's inoculated with. So you can buy these yeast to have various flavor profiles. Number 3, natural wines are additive free. Now, all that being said, that defines natural wine. With Dry Farm Wines, my company, we have the strictest health certification and purity certification of wines in the world. So our certification, which is specific to us, goes over and beyond just being natural wine, because we care about a whole lot of other things other than just the 3 components of natural wine. We also care about lower alcohol for reasons I've already described to you. We care that the wine is sugar-free. Now, the only way to know if a wine is sugar-free is to lab test it, and which we do. Every single wine that I drink is lab tested. Every single wine that I sell is lab tested, independently by a certified enologist on our behalf, looking for certain purity elements, sugar, alcohol, sulfites, to make sure that the wine meets all of our strict criteria. So 1, it's lower alcohol. 2, it's sugar-free. 3, we want to make sure there's no sulfur dioxide added to the wine, so we're looking for extra sulfites. And then also our wines are dry farmed. That's the name of our company. What does dry farming mean? That means that the wine is grown, the vines are grown without irrigation. We don't allow the use of irrigation in the farming of any of our wines. Now, it's fair to note that of the 800 family farms that we work with, of the vineyards that they farm that are not irrigated, saves over 1.4 billion gallons of water a year. And since we're in an international drought and we care about the earth and organic farming and regenerative soil and living in the restoration of living soils, all things that we care about as stewards of Mother Nature, then irrigation is just another thing, and the use and waste of water unnecessarily. You don't need, grapes have been grown, I'm going to take a break here in a second. Grapes have been grown on this planet for almost 10,000 years. And irrigation didn't come to grape farming until the 1970s, anywhere in the world. And there are many, many places that some of the harshest conditions, I'll use one as an example, where we have some farming in Sicily, where it is super hot. It's an island off the coast of Italy. It's a volcanic island, super rocky, super dry and hot. And we successfully farm there without irrigation. So what irrigation does do, though, is allow you to grow higher yields, more fruit, cheaper and faster, and fruit that weighs more because the cluster is larger. And it might not surprise you when you fill grape berries with water, they weigh more, and fruit is sold by the ton. So the more it weighs, the more it's worth. So anyway, that's sort of the story about kind of how we got here through, this massive consolidation of the industry, who's really making most of the wine and how they're making it, right? And so if you choose, my point of view, and I'm going to share one more thing with you on labeling transparency and how deep this, I'd call it a conspiracy, how deep this collusion is between the government and the alcohol industry, particularly the wine industry. 19 years ago, the Center for Science and Public Interest, who you've probably heard of, and they've done some good work, and they've done some work that we don't necessarily agree with in some areas of historically. I think today their founder was a little bit zealot. In fairness for people who know who they are, they've done some controversial work in the past, but they've done a lot of good work as well. 19 years ago, they filed a 16-page petition with the TTB, which is the government taxing authority that oversees the labeling and transparency of alcohol and wine. They filed a 16-page petition, scientifically cited, thoughtfully written, requesting hearings and requesting transparency and labeling on alcohol ingredients, nutritional information, so on and so forth. For 19 years, that petition sat dormant at the TTB until last month. The CSPI filed a lawsuit against the Treasury Department over it. So for 19 years, the industry had it squashed in a drawer, right? And now a lawsuit has been filed by CSPI against the Treasury Department. It's interesting that alcohol labeling is not regulated by the FDA even. It's regulated by a taxing authority whose goal it is to generate more tax through alcohol sales. It's the same kind of irony that you have with myplate.gov, which was the former food pyramid, which is administered and managed by the agricultural department, whose job it is to sell grains, right? And so these sort of conflicts of interest in combination with collusion and special interest is why consumers don't have healthy choices in many aspects of what they eat and drink, including wine. So that's sort of the story of how we got here, what's wrong with it. There's this lawsuit, as you know, will drag on for a decade. Mm-hmm. This will not have any kind of instantaneous result. And so if people care about what they put in their body and they care about drinking and they enjoy wine, then, this is all a rather Russian roulette of what's in my wine. And I'll leave it at this. If you choose to drink dimethyl dicarbonate, which I don't, right, then you should know you're drinking it. And so you should have the option of a contents label that says contained in treatments of this wine are the following chemicals. And one of the reasons that we are deeply involved in this, first of all, we support this lawsuit. And one of the reasons that we're deeply involved in advising the CSPI on this is because we understand from a technical point of view what the industry is going to try to do, which is the following. They're going to try and thread this needle. They're going to say, dimethyl dicarbonate is not an ingredient, it's a treatment. And so they're going to use their K Street lobbyists now we're going to be standing in the way of that because we're the foremost experts on this topic in the United States. And nobody speaks more frequently or knows more about this topic than me. Right? Even people in the wine business don't even know anything about it. I lived in the center of the Napa Valley. People don't talk about additives. You say additives, they say, what? I'm talking about people working in tasting room, wine professionals, don't know anything about it. And so what I suspect, given the political nature of this problem, what will happen is that they'll try to get these treatments carved off as not an ingredient. But what we want to make sure is that if any chemical goes in the wine, you should know about it, right? We don't think it's a treatment. We think it's an ingredient. And so that's kind of how I know that's a mouthful and about 30 minutes of our time, but that's great. But it's, it's just so much to know that it's hard to sort of have a casual conversation about it because the depth of what you need to know in order to understand the gravity of the problem is just so deep.
Well, that's why we wanted you here to have this deep dive. And this is so eye-opening and frankly, a little bit frightening for somebody who enjoys wines. I do have a quick question. Because there are so few farmers that are producing the quality of wine that that would fit your standards, where do you source your wine? Is it mostly Europe? Is it a combination of Europe, US, other countries? What does that look like?
Most of it comes from Europe. Okay. We do not sell any United States wine. No domestic wine meets our standards of purity and health. Wow. We also have a handful of family farms in South America and 5 in South Africa. But the majority of the 800 or so are spread across Europe. The leading country is France. That's sort of where the natural wine revolution began. Other countries that are quite notable in production are Italy, Austria, Spain. But for us, you see, for dry farm wines, from my company, it's a little bit different because we don't sell just natural wine. Let me use Spain as an example. There's a decent amount of natural wine produced in Spain, but most of it does not fit the criteria for dry farm wines. And the reason for that is because the winemaking style, both the climate and the winemaking style in Spain produce a higher alcohol wine than we will accept. So we only sell wines between 7% and 12.5%. Most Spanish wines are over 12.5%. And that's both a combination of winemaking style, the Spanish style of making wine, what they think that their wine consumers want to taste in the way of kind of largeness, because the higher alcohol gets in a wine, the more dense and bold it becomes. And so for Spain as an example, and there are other countries of example, I mean, but Spain's just an example where most of the natural wine there doesn't meet our criteria because it's too high in alcohol. And we're just very strict on the alcohol thing for reasons I've already discussed. And particularly as I'm aging, I want to continue to be able to enjoy wine and enjoy drinking. But one thing has been notable to me is that since I turned 61, 60 was not that big of a thing, but something happened at 61 that really brought my attention to the next stage of aging. And so now I'm thinking about, in my wellness and longevity journey, I'm thinking about 60 to 90, right? And so, and that 60 to 90 is a whole different set of criteria, a whole different set of training, and a whole different set of practices than was 40 to 60. So now I think a lot about things like brain health and dementia, and onset of Alzheimer's. And I think a lot about things like balance. Like, into my fitness regimen for the last several years, I have a significant part of my fitness practice now dedicated to balance. And I have great balance. And I'm like, do these amazing warrior things, like stand on one leg for, the average American can't stand. I'm not talking about warrior. I'm talking about standing on one leg for more than 10 seconds. There's a New York Times article about it recently. But balance. And the other thing, I'm doing stair training up and down. I used to always take the stairs, really for speed and efficiency in airports, and also to get a burst of cardio. But now I've noticed I'm having this slight depth perception going downstairs. So now I'm training up and down at long distances and really working on that. I want to be the champion stair guy at 90.
Yeah, because going downstairs is where most falls happen. So being able to decelerate and control yourself.
Yes. What happens is you age, you lose a depth perception on your step, and you catch yourself you can't see the same way that you see when you're younger.
Yeah.
Same thing for nighttime driving, or all of these things, so I'm thinking about what are the practices and what are the routines and how will I be ready for 90, right? And balance is another really, really big thing. So anyway, that was down a separate wormhole, but.
So one question I get asked a lot, because when I gift people wine, I gift them one of my bottles of Dry Farm. I've been a member for years now. And so they're always asking me what's different about it. And I love to say that it's sugar-free. But what I'm not able to explain they always ask me, well, how can wine be sugar-free if it's made from grapes? Because grapes have sugar naturally. So what happens
I can
to the
explain
sugar?
that to you really simply. Well, let's start by saying that being sugar-free is not a natural wine element. Any wine can be sugar-free, whether it's natural or conventional or toxic or whatever it is. It can be sugar-free. Here's how wine becomes sugar-free, and it's the most common question we get. If it has all this sugar in it, how is it sugar-free? Well, when you make wine, red wine and white wine are made a little bit differently, and I'll talk about that just for a second because it's important for people who don't know why red wines are generally thought to be healthier than white, and I'll cover that in a second. But here's how you make wine. You harvest the berries, you put them in a press. They're generally called a bladder press, but whatever kind of press you use, you put them in a press. You extract the juice from the berries. It's very, very sweet. It's full of sugar. That juice goes into a tank, and then you start to ferment that juice either with the native, in the natural wine case, it's what's called a spontaneous fermentation because the yeast is already in it. It's the wild native yeast that's already present. So when it gets to the proper temperature, as yeast needs to activate, then it will just start fermenting just before your eyes. Now, when conventional wines, remember, they use this GMO lab cultured yeast. In that case, they dump sulfur dioxide into the juice to kill the native yeast because they don't want the yeast competing. So they kill the native yeast and then they inoculate it with this lab cultured GMO yeast. Either way, you have sugary juice and yeast, right? And so how wine is fermented is the yeast eats the sugar. It's like a little Pac-Man. It just eats the sugar. The sugar is the food source for the yeast. Now, if the wine is allowed to fully ferment, the yeast will eat all available sugar, and then the yeast will die and become what's known as lees. That's what dead yeast in wine is known as. So, and then that's removed from the wine, and then you have the fermented wine. If the wine is allowed to fully ferment, it doesn't matter whether it's a toxic conventional wine or a natural wine. It doesn't matter. It'll be sugar-free. And many conventional wines are also sugar-free, and many are not. So the only way to know if a wine has sugar in it is lab tested. How does sugar get in wine? It's not added. Here's how it gets in. So there's this little device that hangs in the wine tank while it's fermenting. And at any given time, it will tell the winemaker exactly how much sugar is left in the juice. If the winemaker, as a matter of their winemaking style, wants to leave sugar behind in the wine, in the industry, it's known as RS, or residual sugar. This is how sugar gets in wine. The winemaker will again dump sulfur dioxide into the tank and kill the GMO yeast, leaving residual sugar behind in the wine. And they decide exactly how much based on, their particular formula or recipe. The chemist decides how much sugar he wants to leave behind in the wine. Our wines are fully fermented, all of them. Not all natural wines are sugar-free, it's fair to note. It's just that that's a criteria for us because of our commitment to how we feel about sugar, blood glucose, and the excess and hyperproduction of insulin, which we happen to believe is the leading cause for many chronic diseases, is elevated blood glucose. The most common one is diabetes, of course. And so we believe that, the hyperproduction of insulin and insulin resistance is one of the leading causes for many chronic illnesses. So one of my goals in my wellness and longevity journey is to maintain a low and steady blood glucose. And I oftentimes, in fact, I was going to put one on today, but I haven't done it yet. A few times a year, I'll wear a continuous glucose monitor to help me understand my relationship between the things that I'm eating and my blood glucose and my fasting schedule. But let me cover one more thing that I mentioned that I would cover. Red wine and white wine are made a little bit differently. So white wine is made from free-run juice. So what I mean by that is that when the juice is pressed from the grape, the juice goes into a tank and it ferments, which is free-run juice. Red wine is different than that. Red wine juice is pressed from the berries. It also goes into a tank. But then the skin and the seeds and the stems are then added to the tank. That's where red wine gets its color and red wine gets its tannin structure. And from the health point of view, it's where red wine gets its additional polyphenols and flavonoids, antiflavonoids. There are about 800 of these polyphenols that occur in red wine, and just over 200 that occur in white wine. And the extra polyphenols and flavonoids and antiflavonoids are coming from contact with the skin, which is also how red wine gets its color. So if you were to squeeze, if you have a grapeberry, a white wine grapeberry and a red wine grapeberry, and you squeeze the juice from both of them when they're ripe, they're both clear. It's the red wine gets its color from skin contact. So that's how they're different and how they're made.
Well, that's fascinating. Do you know what the average sugar content might be in wines that are not sugar-free? Like how much sugar might be in a wine that isn't made to the standards that you're making it?
That is an excellent question. Yes, I can tell you this. No, I can't tell you because there's the TTB approves over 100,000 labels a year in alcohol. So, and the vast majority of that is in wine. So here's because the spirits company will have a handful of SKUs. Wine companies will have dozens and dozens and dozens, right? So here's what I can tell you. Last year, we lab tested the top 20 best-selling wines in the United States. And of the top 20, and all of these lists are readily available online. What's the top 20 selling wines in the United States? They'll give you a list. We lab tested the top 20, and only 2 of them met our criteria for sugar-free. So now the balance had various amounts of sugar, none terribly high, like anything scary like a dessert wine, there'd be 100 grams a liter. Sugar in wine is measured in grams per liter. And so that's a little bit different than by the glass. But a liter is 1,000 milliliters. And of course, a wine bottle is 750 milliliters in almost every case. There's some exceptions to that, but all the wine bottles you see in the grocery store are 750 milliliters. The wines we accept must test out at less than 1 gram per liter, which legally and statistically at the serving level is sugar-free. So no wine on the planet is 0 sugar, but it can be sugar-free because it's so low that it's not measurable. But every wine has a slight degree of, again, it's not testable, it's not statistically relevant if you care about sugar. But when you see a wine company say that 0 sugar in their wine, that's just not true. It may be statistically and legally sugar-free, but all wine has some fraction of sugar in it because it's impossible to remove it all. But that's how you get a sugar-free wine or not.
All right. Super helpful. So we know that you have a hard out. Now that you've convinced everybody that they need dry farm wine in their lives, tell us how we can pick some up for the holidays. Where's the best place to shop?
Well, we're dryfarmwines.com, and we're Dry Farm Wines on all social media. We are a wine club, although we do offer holiday packages. And so if you don't want to join our wine club, just sign up for our email list and you'll likely receive some special offerings over the holidays. We're a wine club because we're a community of health conscious people who enjoy a lot of the same practices and communion that, and we're also, another reason we're a wine club is most of our customers are pretty regular wine drinkers who want the convenience of getting our wines on a schedule. So, but let me just talk about that. And let me talk about costs too, because these wines are not expensive as handcrafted fine wine products go. We sell wines for $27 a bottle, and that includes shipping. And that's a big deal because wine's super heavy. And it's expensive to ship, but we pay for that. So if you take the shipping out, they come down to about $25 a bottle, which is a fairly price for a fine handcrafted wine product, organic even to boot, dry farmed even to boot, all of which make it more expensive. And these small family farms, because they use native yeast fermentation, can't make wine in large volumes. So they have compressed margins, and we believe in fair pricing to farmers, which is, by the way, I'd also mention we never discount wine, not even for Cyber Monday or Black Friday. We don't do discounts because we believe in fair pricing to our farmers who we are helping be better stewards of the earth. So also happen on discounting. I believe that companies discount for two reasons. One, they have too much of something they can't sell. Not the case for us. Our wines are rare. And number two, they weren't charging you a fair price in the first place, right? So we just take this point of view that we have this fair price, and we just never discount it. There's a surprising number of consumers today. This is really interesting. Who will drop out of their cart, what's called an abandoned cart, believing that we'll then send them a discount offer to come back, right? Like 16% of people abandon cart or some kind of crazy number, and then the what they're waiting on is for you to send them a discount because you didn't close your sale, right? We don't do that. But
well, you heard it here, folks. Order, you go on, you order, there's no extra discounts, and
it's worth it. It's delicious. Yeah, I look forward to my box every time it comes, and I love the variety and experimenting with something new from a different region of the world. And it's always just fun.
It's like traveling around the world without leaving home on your wine adventure. Yes. And we also have 100% happiness promise guarantee. Any wine you don't like, we'll replace it or refund it, no questions asked. We have a high degree of confidence in it. And if you don't, and I treat people like I want to be treated. If you send me something I don't like, you should give me my money back, or at least send me something I'm going to like, and don't give me a bunch of bunk about it, right? So it's just like, I'm busy. Just get this done. So we have renowned customer service. Look, we just want to help people live a healthier life and celebrate wines that we love and can make it easy. I know we went long today. But thank you for having me.
Todd, we love your wine. We love what your company stands for and who you are as a person. So thank you so much. We know you're a busy guy, so we really, really appreciate your time today. And thank you to all of our listeners. We appreciate you guys. Until next time, take care, everyone.
If you'd like to access other episodes or subscribe so you don't miss a beat, you can find us at nanp.org/NANP-podcast.
Membership in the NANP provides you with a competitive advantage. Whether you're a current practitioner or a student, we want you to become an active, informed leader of the holistic nutrition community and join today at NANP.org. NANP is very proud to provide the highest level of professional recognition and validation in the holistic nutrition industry through the board certification in holistic nutrition credential. To earn this valuable designation, candidates must demonstrate an exceptional level of knowledge and understanding of holistic nutrition by passing a board exam and documenting client contact hours. Are you ready to boost your credibility with board certification? Visit NANP.org today to apply.
Keep in mind that the information on the NANP podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical or legal advice. The NANP is not liable or responsible for any harm, damage, or illness arising from the use of the information contained herein. By listening to the information on this podcast, you agree to defend, indemnify, and hold harmless the NANP and all agents. Copyright NANP, all rights reserved.